Okay, hi guys. Welcome back to this new episode of the Media and Content Business Podcast. And this week I have with me Sidharth. Sidharth is the founder of Swasthya Plus, and it's a health content platform where he's basically creating a lot of content to address the health, needs, and probably to help in the information spread of health related information to the masses in the country. First of all, thanks a lot, Siddharth, for coming down here and agreeing to speak to me on this.
Thank you, Jugal, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, we've had conversations before about
Right.
media and the content business. It's something both of us are passionate about, and love to explore this again with you.
Right, great, great. So, Siddharth, right away, getting into, would you like to tell the audience what is it that Swasthya Plus is all about? What you've been doing so far?
Right. So, Swasthika Plus, like you mentioned, is a health media network. What we do is we create video content in about 14 languages, catering to the South Asian region right now.
Right,
If you look at why do we do this and the problem statement, so basically we started before the pandemic
right,
with the thesis that there isn't a lot of attention that's being given to health journalism, which is also the fact today. Though we did see this change a lot during the pandemic, where health was often the number one subject. But as the
right,
pandemic sort of fades away into the background, we still see that health takes a backseat almost every single time, right?
right,
So, especially if you look at if you take a couple of steps back and look at the entire content landscape, a lot has changed since the entry of Geo. We've seen a content explosion, we've seen a content consumption explosion, we've seen lots of new platforms, we've seen lots of audio only platforms built specifically Bharat, from OTTs to audio to video to short
right,
videos, with TikTok going out, etc. So I think in the last 5 years, the entire scenario has been changing every year, right? This
right,
has been happening every single year for the platforms, for users, for the content creators, etc. But
right,
what has happened is that if you look at the broad digital divide, you can give someone a device, you can even give them an internet connection, which is what happened with Geo, a phone with the Chinese players coming in, and etc.
right.
But if they don't have content and services in a language that they can understand and are comfortable with, the loop isn't really closed, right?
All right.
So
Makes sense.
you are, let's say, sitting in rural Odisha, you have a smartphone, you have the internet connection, you have the entire world, hypothetically, you have the entire internet to you. But it feels like the internet isn't really built for you because you don't have information in your own languages that can talk to you directly, right?
Right. And I
That's
think, did you see this
Mhm.
problem particularly in the health space? That's what motivated you out here to kickstart health related content per se?
Right. Thank you for that question again. So, if you look at again the broader landscape, the kind of content that people think works, or the kind of content that seems to also be going out, a lot is either clickbait, it's, let's say, content in areas such as lifestyle, sports, etc., that are often
Right.
also seen by media organizations as subjects that people care a lot about and want to see a lot of content about.
Right.
What I really did was to go back to the building blocks and say, okay, why does the media exist, right? If we exist to help people improve their lives, which is sort of the view that I take here,
All
then
right.
what are the fundamental ways in which we can help people improve their lives?
Okay.
So initially we had a plan basically to do something around health. So because that sort of is the highest impact vector that I can think of, right?
Okay.
You need to be alive first, you need to be healthy first before you think about, let's say, money. So we
Right.
thought, okay, can we do something to help people know how to manage their money, grow their money, save money, etc. Then something around also professional growth, right? Can they earn more money? So these are, I think, two, three areas that we thought where there wasn't a lot of work happening, plus there was also a lot of work needed,
Okay.
especially for people who are not the top 1% or 5% of India, right?
All right.
So that was a broad thesis. And then the pandemic happened, and as a small startup, we realized we were spreading ourselves too thin. And
Okay.
if we had to choose one, the choice was very clear
All right.
when we were in the middle of the pandemic to focus just on health.
All right. So you started with, you mentioned you started with two, three content genres, but then you narrowed down onto
Mhm.
health is where you wanted to focus on, right? Also, in terms of the language, Siddharth, uh, I've seen that Oriya and Hindi are your two biggest languages so far. Your presence is there heavily. So, is it your background that you chose Oriya, or did you see actually a gap in that particular language that wanted to start in Oriya?
So we are based out of Bhubaneswar, Odisha,
All
and
right,
it was the. So I'll tell you, when we started with a text content platform, right?
all right,
So our pivot has been to Just Health, but our pivot has also been from, let's say, a traditional text blogging platform to then pivoting into video, right? When we
all right,
pivoted to video, what we used to do is we were very focused on like getting the highest production quality possible. So
all
we
right.
would have camera crews with 4K cameras going in physically to locations and shoot.
Okay,
Since we were based out of Bhubaneswar, it was the most like logical place for us to do a pilot, right?
okay,
What then happened is that we found someone in Lucknow. We set up a camera team and a reporting team in Lucknow, and then we kickstarted our Hindi language. So
okay,
for the past 3 years, like if our journey is about 2.5, 3 years, for the first 1 year, we were very focused on just trying to build out these teams across India slowly, right? Again, very small startup, bootstrap, like you know. So Odisha was very easy to do. So we started out of Bhubaneswar and did Odia. That worked. We were like, let's do Hindi. Then we were trying to do Bangla. For six
right,
months, we couldn't find anyone who would fit into that role.
okay,
Thankfully, somehow some wisdom came to us that why do we need cameras on the ground? We could just do this virtually. And that right now I think it sounds silly, but that time it was an epiphany after I think a month of doing this. That because suddenly all our troubles with how do we do 15 languages were gone, right?
all right,
So it's like we spent 1 year trying to have the best production experience, trying to
right.
get boots on the ground. And then after 1 year, we were like, we don't need any of this. And suddenly we were scaling very quickly. So the reason you see Odia is most popular is because we started it first.
All right. But tell me something, Siddharth. This is very interesting now that you speak about your content creation experience and the fact that you've been setting up
Mhm.
production teams. Can you tell us how is it that you create content right now?
Right. So I think over the last 2, 3 years, um, we've been able to refine processes and come a long way in creating content. We're still struggling in let's say optimizing content for YouTube or scheduling in advance. Those are still some things I think every creator sort of struggles with. Like the dream journey for creator is can I have the next 3 months scheduled and you can sleep peacefully, right? That's I think we're still a long way from there. But but to answer your question more specifically, um, initially we looked at what media organizations sort of do, right?
Right.
If you want to work on something, you get, let's say, a reporter and a camera person at a particular location. They reach out to, let's say, in our case, doctors, and then ask them, are you available, etc., and then go do a shoot and come back, send that
Right.
content to us. Then we have a video editor in the background who knows that particular language and then edits that video. Then some person from the content team who knows that language gives some text, title, description, whatever, and reviews that video, etc. Which means you need a reporter, you need a camera person, you need a content person, you need a video editor, all of whom know that language. Okay.
All right.
So if you look at also organizations that do this, let's say across 10, 15 languages, there are very few in India who work, let's say, more than 5, 6, 7, 8 languages. What would
Right.
happen traditionally, I don't know, maybe like network 18. So what would happen there is you would have a separate desk, right, for this channel where you
Right.
have, let's say, a Bengali video editor, a Bengali copy editor, a Bengali producer, a Bengali camera person, a Bengali reporter. It's like 5 people for that one process. Multiplied into 15 would have been 75 people. That's just something that we couldn't do, right?
Exactly.
So I think
Right.
I was again reflecting on this yesterday. Was that the fact that we wanted to be bootstrapped and not look at institutional capital also meant we couldn't do things the traditional way. The
Right.
fact that we had these constraints actually let us do a lot more, right? The fact that we will go only virtual. So what we do right now is We still do some physical shoots, but most of our work is virtual. So
Okay.
we have a team of virtual consultants slash freelancers, some interns in some languages. They help us reach out to doctors who would like to volunteer their time for what we
Okay.
do. And then we send them a list of questions. The doctors prepare, or health experts, psychologists, etc. as well. They prepare, and then we share a Zoom link, get on the Zoom call, hit the record button,
Right.
and then the entire conversation happens, and then all the heavy lifting is then done by our video editing team. Now the key point here is that we have tried to figure out a way in which a video editor who does not know Malayalam also edits Malayalam videos,
Okay.
right? That because that has meant that the work that we do is sort of language agnostic, because we work with the content person remotely to ask
Okay.
them, can you check this? If there is an issue here, can you tell us what's happening here? We
All right.
send all the videos that we create back to the doctors for a certification, where they carefully watch the entire video and tell us that yes, nothing is misrepresented, nothing is wrong.
Right.
So basically, the traditional way to do this would have been to get like 5 people for each channel doing it. What we have done is to figure out, can one video editor edit 10 languages as well? What
Wow.
that means is, if we can do 10, we can do 50 as well, right? So
Right.
suddenly it's sort of the entire organizational processes and systems are designed in a way that we can very quickly scale.
All right. But I see that I think Bangla has picked up a lot, Marathi has picked up a lot, but
Hmm.
it's mostly Oriya and Hindi that you guys, and Kannada is also
Yeah.
there. Great. So how
Mhm.
big a team are you right now?
Right. So I think we are a team of around 10, 15 full-time people, and about 15, 20 more freelance consulting interns, etc.
Okay, wow.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
still a very small team to be kind of creating content in 14, 15 languages like you've mentioned, right? But I think you figured the way out, like you've said, one video editor doing it for so many languages. Then I think it mostly boils down to the fact that you have to have just one person who at least understands the language, who can then help all the other teams make sure that everything is happening in the correct way, and there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with
and
that.
also we work very closely with the doctors, because again, our number one goal is information integrity, right? Because we are
Right.
working in an area like health. Therefore,
Right.
what we do is we work with them very closely, and we also work with a language specialist. But we don't, but what we figured out is that we don't need every person who is a part of the process to know every language.
Okay, right.
So,
Makes sense. But Siddharth, I should have asked this question earlier, but can you help us with your
mhm,
background? Because this is very,
right.
you're speaking a lot about from the media perspective. And yeah, please just go ahead. I mean, that'll be very interesting for us to know.
So I can. So I have. Okay, where do I go with this? So let me talk about college, perhaps,
Right.
because what happens often is that I have a bachelor's degree. I started Swasthika Plus at the last year of my college, right?
And this is
So
bachelor's
while in
degree.
college,
Okay, which year was
yeah, yeah.
this?
So this was. So I basically did a 4-year degree. I did a liberal arts program,
Okay.
which meant I did random courses, and I
Okay.
walked out with barely any skills. At least that's the cliche answer you will get if you ask any liberal arts student. But
Right.
but I think my education sort of was in the social sciences,
Okay.
public policy, just understanding. I did a bunch of courses in digital marketing, so
All
I
right.
could figure out what is intent driven, what is discovery driven. So, sort of fundamentals of a bunch of things. I was always
Okay.
interested in entrepreneurship. I led the entrepreneurship lab on campus for about 2 years.
Right.
So, that sort of thread has always been there across the
Okay.
journey. Um, but I think the reason I started up, if that is a relevant part again here, is that I sort of saw a bus, right? So it was an opportunity. I sort of thought of it as an opportunity for a lifetime, that, okay, Geo, this was again 2019-ish. So
Okay.
Geo has already come, it has already
Right.
disrupted. TikTok has just arrived, right?
Right.
They still haven't been shut the door. So that was the time. And what it felt for me was that, okay, there is this one small window that perhaps if we do, and there is obviously there's this long pressing need that has always been there for content,
Right.
on priority areas in
Right.
regional languages that does not exist. But there's also
Right.
this bus where we see this content explosion. We see this is again the early days of the creator economy. And the question for me very simply was, do I want to give it a shot or live the rest of my life thinking why did I not give it a shot? It was just regret minimization framework or whatever you call it. But that was
Right.
basically the thing saying, let's give this a solid shot. And then, one thing led to another. And today we are sitting here having this conversation.
Awesome.
But I
Awesome.
don't have a background in media. So I'm an
Right.
outsider in media. I'm an outsider in health.
Right. That's awesome because
So,
that's why, I initially thought that, you're coming from a health perspective, but then you've, worked in various genres and you narrowed down on health because of multiple other reasons rather than you being, somewhere having a health background. And then you spoke about media, you spoke about Network 18. So my natural question was that probably you've worked in these kind of desks before because, this desk word is very common within media circles. People outside would not
right.
know about it that easily. Great. So coming back to the content part, currently, you started with a blog. I see that it's still there and you guys are publishing a lot of content there as well. And your heavy presence is on YouTube, right? Where you're putting out videos per se. Did you guys try out those short video platforms by any chance? TikTok or Josh or whatever those, not Josh talks, it's Josh and Moj and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Because a lot of your
So
audience is there.
mhm. I think what has happened from the very beginning is that at least I have this logic of being laser focused as much as possible, right?
Okay.
So, and the fact that we are a very small team. So, like when
Right.
I say 15 people, out of 15 people, I think seven are just video editors, right?
Okay.
So lots of people again just doing the heavy lifting. So we aren't really a big team. Right now we're trying to expand our team again to hire for relevant roles where we can actually do a lot of these things.
Right.
But I think something that were clear was that we wanted platforms who respect the fact that we want monetization opportunities from the get-go, right?
All right.
Or at least a path through monetization. Like we aren't doing almost anything on Instagram
All right. Yeah.
as well. Even that's a big platform.
Great.
We have right now limited our Facebook work to just I think Oriya, Hindi, and two three other pages, right? Because
Great.
again, we don't see that as a long term, like as if you're building long term assets there.
All
So
right.
that's I think that's partly because we are very limited in capacity, that's partly because we want to always be laser focused. And like I said, we're a very small team. Right? We couldn't do 10 things, so we said, and again, the content that we make also, it's not high engagement content. But if somebody has, so for example, even when I would talk to people about this, saying the content that we make, sometimes you could call it boring, right? Like when I watch a video, it's a 30-minute video about diabetes, where a doctor is telling you very slowly what is
Great.
diabetes, why does diabetes happen, what are the various complications, what should you do. So nobody, there is no hook in the video, right? In
Right.
beginning, right? है ना? There's no shock and awe. We have a very clear policy. No clickbaity stuff. We are not trying to have fear or use any of those things to get people to watch our content. But if somebody has diabetes, they listen to it intently. We've had millions of views for videos that are very simple. Our most popular video, I think, right now is what is common cold. Why
Okay.
would you ever think a video on common cold will be the most popular video? But the
Right.
problem today just is that, right? That when you walk into a doctor's office, you hardly get maybe 2 minutes. नाम क्या है, age क्या है, what's your weight, when did the
Right.
symptoms start, what's the symptoms, अच्छा, take it from the shop outside. That's it. You don't know what's happening to you don't know that there are different lines of treatment. And the thing is, we have always wanted this content. We want to know what is happening with something as close as our own body in our own languages. Now,
Right.
if you look at it from an engagement perspective, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Ki, what is happening here? Why are people even watching this video? Right? If you look at it purely from a digital marketing engaging perspective, but this is content that people need, where the need for content triumphs everything else.
It's very intent driven, it seems, right? I have common cold, I'll go and search for it and I'll kind of look into it.
So we've seen a mix. We've seen a mix because if you look at, so search traffic is again, this differs across languages. Hindi
Okay.
is a very search-driven channel for us. ODI
Okay.
is barely a search-driven. It's almost discovery-driven for us on YouTube as well.
Okay.
So it's a mix. Like if you have diabetes, you're going through the videos. There is a video on how can you manage your diabetes better. Maybe you'll click on it and watch it. Right.
Right.
So mhm.
That's awesome. Tell me something. How do you decide on the content? Like, you said your most famous video is what is common cold, right? There is diabetes. How does that thought process come? Ki, you know what? I'm going to create videos on common cold. Where does that thought process come from? What are those topics that you're working on?
Right. Again, so since we work around 14 languages, what we've done is build, again, over time, build processes, documents, etc. I was just reflecting 2, 3 days ago, I think, that we've like passed this random landmark of having 3,000 videos up. Like, currently, we have around, I was just looking this morning, we have around 400 videos in our library right now, like waiting to be edited, already edited, etc. So for things like these, from the beginning, I think our approach was: can we first get the building blocks right? Okay, the most common
Okay.
ailments. Can we have very specific videos? Okay, what is the cause? What is the treatment? How can you prevent it? How do you diagnose it, etc. So what we've created a topic bank where there are hundreds of topics, and then we also mark, okay, is it done for Gujarati? Yes, it's done for Gujarati, but maybe
Okay.
it's not done for Assamese. Okay, let's so a reporter who's working for us will be like, okay, I have a um, endocrinologist with me. Let me look at what topics are on the topic bank for an endocrinologist in Assamese
Okay.
that are not done. So let's say PCOS or thyroid. I'm like, okay, I'll mark them as I'm doing them right now, get that interview. So we've relied on processes. Literally, I think the entire company runs on one Google Sheet. If that Google Sheet disappears, all our lives will become very, very, yeah.
Right, right. But tell me something, okay? We spoke about this intent search and discovery, right, for your
Mhm.
videos. Tell me something. How did you go about, putting your, getting those subscribers to come on your YouTube channel? Your 450K plus on one, your 286, plus on 1K, right? So how did you go about building that subscriber base? What was the process like? What worked for you guys and what didn't work for you guys?
Right. So initially, I think when we started with Odia, we saw a very strong reception. I don't know why or how, but
Okay.
the channel just took off. In a couple of months, it took off like crazy.
There was
This was
no
the middle of
advertising at all.
middle of COVID. For YouTube, zero.
Okay, awesome.
Absolutely zero. What we
Okay,
do, so in the initial days, again, you do things that don't scale, and then when you scale, you can't do those things anymore because they barely move the needle, right?
right, right,
So we had WhatsApp groups in the beginning saying Swasthya Plus Oriya Health Club. That okay, every day we'll put a link to a new video, and then I think we had a couple thousand people on those groups.
right,
We did some spending, barely any. I mean, obviously nothing when you compare with what people spend these days, especially funded companies. But on
right,
Facebook, we did spend some to get like a 10,000 likes or 20,000 likes, right? We tried to do some Facebook advertising for videos to give the Facebook page a push because that needed a push clearly. It was not going to happen automatically on Facebook. YouTube has
right.
been very organic. We would share the links to our videos on Facebook, but it was, I think, this was just content people needed all along, but they never were getting that. Because what
Okay,
happened is that Odisha it has a population of about, I think, 4.5 crores.
okay,
We would have 50 lakh people watching us every month. And
okay,
uh, that's a big number. So I remember there was one small startup exhibition once they invited us. The government has invited us. We were there as
okay,
an exhibit, and if you had 10 people coming in, 4 or 5 of them would be like, "Oh, I've seen your videos," right? And that was crazy validation for us. I mean, at that point, because
right,
we had our doctors when they would go to their village. Somebody was like, "Arey, आप तो स्वास्थ्य plus के doctor हो ना?" So even
okay,
these things, so there was a strong recognition, at least in Odisha. That's something that we've been able to build, right? And that gave us the confidence to be like, okay, we've tried Odia, but maybe we are in Odisha physically. Maybe that's why Odia worked, right? So we're
right,
like, let's try Hindi. where we are not there. We just have a reporting team out there. Let's try Hindi. Hindi
Right.
took us more than a year. For a year, we barely had anyone watching us. And again, this
Okay.
is very important. I had tweeted that picture by Jack Pacha where he has that thing saying, basically, if you look at the journey of an internet company, especially for a content creator, you have very long periods of nobody watching you,
Right.
and then suddenly things change. And
And
right, but for the first 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, 18 months, you are investing the same amount of effort that you invest on the 19th month, but you only see results after, let's say, 13th, 14th month. So when you look at our channels today, Odia and Hindi are at big numbers, or at good numbers, not crazy
right.
numbers, they're good numbers, right? Some 450K, I think, and
Right.
even Hindi. But
Right.
we also have 12 more channels. Some channels have 300 subscribers, some channels have 50, some channels have 10,000. Um, so for
But
me as a founder, also it's sort of like a decision, right? Like, okay, will this ever work? Because just because Odia work doesn't mean Hindi will. Just because Hindi work doesn't mean the rest 12 will. But again, something about this, content creator journey tells us that let's do this consistently. These things take time, but we will see results at some day. Again, because like I said, our strategy has been to do a lot of this organically. Why?
okay.
Because again, we are bootstrapped, right? We've tried to use revenues to fund our growth, which means time is some we aren't great at doing things very quickly because we don't put a lot of money into blowing things up, right? Yeah.
Right. But that's really great because I've been speaking to a lot of media companies recently, and one thing which often strikes is that it is just the consistency which led them to such huge numbers overall, be it in terms of engagement or be it in terms of the number of subscribers and so forth. And this retort where someone says that I don't know what happened. One day I woke up and all of a sudden it was just those number of subscribers were ringing, and that's become a very common theme. And the reason why I always ask this is because people, everybody wants to spend that money on marketing. Everybody wants to create that next viral video, but the ones who have done it have no clue how that happened. But the only constant
Mhm.
thing is consistency. They just went about doing it for a long period of time, and one day, all of a sudden, it happened. But that's great to know that you've been managed. You've managed to do this without spending. In fact, like you mentioned, no money at all on YouTube, the place where your presence is the largest. So you know what, Siddharth, coming straight down to your revenue models right now, right, you're bootstrapped. Just wanted to understand how is it that you've built up your revenue streams so far, and yeah, if you could shed light on whatever is happening on that front.
Yeah, we're bootstrapped, but we're not broken even. We still
Okay.
invest every single month.
Okay.
Especially like I told you, we have two channels that are big, but we invest on building 14 channels. Most of
Right.
them who are again in that, if you think of this as different stages of growth, they're possibly still seedlings, right? Slowly growing.
Right.
So that has happened. Also, for your previous point, I think with consistency, it's also about consistently improving, right? Consistently looking at the content, making sure that you are doing content that sort of will work, right? At least if you know that yes, we are doing good quality content, we are putting it out, then that's okay. But like because as a founder again, one big decision is about when to quit and when to keep going on, right?
Right.
So again, that's just a caveat I want to put in there for
Right.
consistency, because you don't want to do things for multiple years where things just don't work out. Because I think that is also the case with 99% of channels, I guess. I don't know the exact statistic, but because you have millions of channels on YouTube, but very few actually are able to shine through, right?
Right.
Coming back to numbers. In the last 2 years, we've had about 150 million views across all our Facebook, YouTube, etc. Revenue wise, it's not great at all. Most
Okay.
of our revenue, for example, has been coming from our research collaborations. We do a bit of research, has been coming from partnerships that we have. Let's say we work closely with UNICEF because they are interested in health. We try to create campaigns for them or together that can sort of help push. For example, during the COVID, we did multiple campaigns for behavior change because there were lots of things around COVID, right? People needed vaccine hesitancy was a big thing around COVID. We worked
Right.
extensively on vaccine hesitancy. So what has happened is that we've tried to get revenues. It's a classic startup story, you know. We try to get revenues from consulting and services to
Right.
pay for building of Swasthika Plus or the product until it sort of can pay for itself and more going forward.
Right.
What has happened is that if you look at, I'm going to come to you with my sort of revenue philosophy so far,
Right.
um, and maybe some thinking around that. So I think I don't know if this is also a goal that most creators have, but the idea is that can we just focus on doing what we do best or doing what we want to do, just to create great content and put that out and
Okay.
not have to worry about other things, right? That's, I think, a
Right.
classic thing that many people would also like. If you look at the
Right.
traditional media business model, advertising is a key element. Yes, advertising that integrates into your, let's say, your TV, ये या फिर print, etc. But lots of media organizations rely on things like events, right? You see so many conclaves, award events, etc. That sort of, and events are a big chunk of media revenues, right? So for me, I think the thinking there is that it's almost like something that you have to do, which is not relevant, right? Because as a social enterprise, we are very simple in the fact that we are impact driven. So will
Right.
this help people live more healthy?
Right.
Doing an event in a fancy hotel with lots of sponsors is not driving the needle in that direction.
Okay.
Therefore, that's not something we want to do. However,
All right.
that is largely the media business model today, right?
Exactly.
Doing a bunch of events. That's for let's say for legacy mainstream media, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
When you look at content creators today, um, I think there again there's a lot of different degrees of sophistication in their revenue models. So you have people who are doing influencer integrations and stuff that is, I think, accelerating very quickly. Then you also have someone like Ankur Wariku, who is, I think, has done a tremendous job, right, with integrating digital products into the fray. So mostly new age media models or creator economy models are advertising is sort of possibly the foundation of it, but mostly recognized by everyone as something that can does not pay the bills, right?
Right.
We have people building on memberships. If for that you need a community who's very closely linked with you, interacting like streamers. Membership is great for streamers, and you also, if you have people who have the ability to pay and who have the sophistication of already paying, let's say on a platform like YouTube, right? So I think that's a sort of like a different audience.
Right.
Then you also have courses, selling products, etc.
Right.
So for us, I think the biggest challenge is that how do we then make money unless we sell a product or a digital product or a service, right? I think most creators sort of are trying to make or finding ways to make money from beyond the content experience.
Right.
So content sort of becomes a start of the funnel, right? It's
It
as if
becomes a
we are
lever,
building
basically.
distribution. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sort of like, are we building a funnel or are we building a distribution mechanism for a D2C healthcare company? It's almost like that at this point,
Right.
right? But
Right.
if you want to just do content, there are very limited avenues for actually making revenue. We've had lots of influencer marketing agency etc. reach out to us, but most of in health again, see, we want our brand to again be about providing you unbiased information through which
Right.
you can make an informed decision about your health, right?
Right.
Pushing content through that is not something I am comfortable with. Like
Right.
as a founder, I'm not comfortable with doing that. Again,
Right.
most of the healthcare industry also seems to be around with lots of Ayurveda products. There are lots of organic wellness products, health supplements, etc.
Right.
that that aren't really products that I can or we can recommend to
But
people.
tell me something.
Mhm.
Tell me something, Siddharth. Have you thought of something on these lines that probably, I understand your, predicament here that while you really want to serve the community and be very impactful to those, to that particular community, to the health needs of that community, you also feel that current media models are not suited. These two points don't come together. Is there any middle ground that you've recognized, or you feel that you can do something, create a middle ground in the very near future, which allows you to
I mean,
drive
I think
revenues? Yeah.
for Swastika Plus to survive and thrive, that is something that needs to be done. I think that's my number one question. Even if that's not something I spend the most time on, but that's always the number one question that I'm trying to answer is
Right.
can we, let's say, have memberships which don't put a gate on the content? The content is always accessible for free, but can we have people who believe in our mission and want to sort of contribute? So there are various models at this point I'm considering. There is no silver bullet to this that I can sort of look at
Okay.
this point, right? A lot of
Okay.
work that we do is sort of non-profitish, like
Right.
like the kind of work that we do. So we're trying to also see if we can build more collaborations. And as the entire network pans out, can we work with organization at a national level? Because right now, if you want to talk to health seeking audiences in 12 languages, you can't do that anywhere apart from us. So I think the idea, see, honestly, our focus for the last 2 3 years has been just on building this operations out, and it has been incredibly complex, and it remains incredibly complex even today. And therefore revenue has been taking sort of a backseat there, but
Okay.
like
Makes
it has to get in the front seat. Yeah.
makes sense. Makes sense. But one last question on the revenue front, Siddharth. How much does it cost to for a brand to work with Swasthya Plus? What are the implications involved? The CPMs probably, or how does it work out when a brand needs to work with you?
I think we are very flexible there. What we really try to understand is what brands are looking for, and if there is a close brand alignment or a brand fit, right?
Right.
Because, for example, we work with UNICEF where we were like, okay, we want to create behavior change around COVID so that people take things more seriously. There is no stigma, etc. We're working with
Right.
international research organizations on can we work on vaccine hesitancy. I think the number one thing has been, um, do you share a mission with us, right?
Right.
And can
Right.
we work on helping people? So instead of being a direct product placement sort of a thing, we look at things like these. And also we are very flexible. Like we would love to work with startups on a revenue share on leads, whatever. So
Okay.
we are very open and flexible.
All right, that makes sense. That makes sense, Siddharth. You know what, Siddharth? I think it's been great trying to understand, and it's very different because, like you initially mentioned, that a lot of media houses tend to focus on developing content which might be very clickbaity, but that's also probably to do with the fact that their intent lies their number one goal is probably to generate revenue and so forth, whereas you are more impact driven. That's where the difference comes in. And really, the kind of work that you're doing is really awesome. And because there's a lot of misinformation being spread out, and the fact that you actually reach out to the right experts and not just WhatsApp experts to kind of spread this kind of information, that's really amazing. And I want to end this. I was about to say a thank you, but I have this one question in mind. um, WhatsApp forwards relating to health, right? They work like crazy. I mean, irrespective of their
Yeah.
authenticity and how correct they are, right? You also mentioned that you've kind of created groups on WhatsApp and so forth. But have you used it as a channel separately to kind of spread or build this Swasthya Plus network or the kind of content that you're creating?
Great question again. So, like we said, WhatsApp groups were sort of crucial to our growth stage at the very beginning. Right. Right
Right,
now, with the numbers that we see, getting 1,000 people a message does not really move the needle that much. So we haven't really
right,
been doing that a lot. But I think again, if you look at if you look at the question of product market fit or any sort of validation, this was one aspect, right? When I saw Swasthika Plus videos being forwarded from various, like, going through a very long chain and coming back into a family group where nobody, where they don't know that I run Swasthika Plus. Okay, so
Okay.
extended family groups or groups that my dad or my mom is in, like colony groups, etc. They suddenly see, oh, Swastika Plus group is, or even us, even our team members, right? They're like, okay, yesterday somebody put this video on our group, and that has been a great validation for us, saying, okay, this seems to be growing, and yeah. So I
So
think this sort of there's. Mhm.
it was there during the initial phase, like you said. After that, you guys haven't worked on it.
Initial phase we used to push WhatsApp. What's happening is that people just find a way to get the best content and wildly get it everywhere. So we know
Yeah.
WhatsApp is a great channel for us even now, but we don't have to do anything for it.
All right.
Just
All
create
right. But
great content.
yes, one last thing, Siddharth. You mentioned those 1,000 people. How did you get those first 1,000 people on, for that WhatsApp list? Where did you get them from?
Right. Again, I think when we are starting out, it a lot of work has. Again, I would come back to that same line, which is to do things that not scale, which meant
Right.
if we are launching a Gujarati channel, I would send that link saying, hey, this is a thing to all my Gujarati friends that I know, so they can
Right.
share with their family members in their family groups. There has been a lot of talking to my team members and then spreading it across our own networks, and then
Okay.
slowly sort of kept growing. So it has been very on an individual,
All
like
right.
individual level, saying, please join this group, share it with your family. Yeah, spamming
Right.
groups, not
Right.
spamming,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
the classic strategy when you're starting out. So yeah.
Right. That's good to know. That's good to know. You always see that, initially the first 100, the first 1,000 are done on a very word of mouth basis. You
Mhm.
individually go and do it, and then it kind of scales up.
Yeah.
But you know what, Siddharth, it's been really, really great having this conversation with you. It's a very different kind of content that you're focusing on, very different genre. And like you said, it's not like, something which is a hook or which is really engaging, but yet, you've built a community around it. So hats off to all you guys. And once again, thanks a lot for coming down for this.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I think I've reflected on a bunch of things, and you also reminded me that I need to put revenue on the driver's seat, not just on the back seat. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's amazing talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Siddharth.